He was called the most evil pope in history. It's a man who held immense power, had an insatiable lust for women. He had 4 mistresses at the same time and had children with at least 3 of them. This is the story of Pope Benedict IX in the year 1012. The citizens of Rome were up to their usual debauchery when suddenly a man appeared in the square, brandishing a dagger and announcing that he was the new pope. The people looked at each other in confusion. There were already 2 popes in the city. What this man said was obviously a lie, or was it? The previous year, there was a papal election in which 2 men became the pope. At first, it seemed like a good choice. One of the newly elected popes was a strong leader who went by the name of John XIX. The other one was Sylvester II, who was seen as a smart and educated man. But there was a problem. They couldn't stand each other, and they began fighting over who was the true pope. It quickly escalated into a full-blown war, not just between the 2 men, but between their supporters as well. The violence soon spilled out onto the streets of Rome, and this is where the story of Benedict IX started. His real name wasn't Benedict. In fact, his birth name was Theophylact. He was a young man living in Rome who, according to legend, was a handsome young man with long golden hair and an athletic build. And although he was poor, he was very proud of his appearance. One day, while walking through the city, he saw a poster advertising a gladiator contest and decided to join. The problem was that gladiators had to be bald and get rid of their fingernails and toenails. For Theo, this was unacceptable, so he didn't participate in the contest. But when he heard about the hefty prize money, he came up with another plan. He would impersonate a pope and take the money. Now, if you're wondering why anyone would think that a fake pope could fool the Romans, let me tell you, back then, no one knew how to take a joke. The next Sunday, when the real pope was in church, Theo put on a white robe, took a crozier, and walked into the church as the so-called Pope Benedict IX. When everyone turned around and stared at him, pointed a dagger at them and shouted that he was the true pope. Of course, everyone burst into laughter. That is until Benedict pulled out a heavy bag of gold coins and offered it to the crowd. Suddenly things got serious. The people wanted that money. And after some negotiations, Benedict was allowed to keep half of the money and become the 3rd Pope of Rome. Although we have to admit that Benedict was a good actor and had the crowd fooled, he was only pretending. As soon as he was alone in his room, he threw off the robe and cursed under his breath. Now, we don't know exactly what happened next, but according to legend, the 2 rival popes smelled fear and decided to take advantage of the situation. They attacked Benedict's residence, kidnapped him, put him in a sack along with a few rats, and then threw him into the Tiber River. To make things worse, both popes claimed that the other one was the false pope, and that they had captured the impostor. Obviously, Benedict was furious. When he made it out of the river alive, he vowed revenge. Not much is known about what happened during the following years. But Benedict somehow managed to gain enough support and power to launch a counterattack. His first target was the one who had thrown him into the river, Pope John XIX. Benedict chased him all the way to the Lateran Palace, broke inside and defrocked the man. Next, he turned his attention to Pope Sylvester II, who had fled to the castle of Santa Maria in Cosmedine. Once again, Benedict showed up, unannounced, and forced the Pope to leave the city. The 2 former popes weren't seen in Rome again, but instead in southern France, where they spent the rest of their lives arguing about who was the true pope. Benedict's supporters hailed him as a hero, and soon later he was officially recognized as the true pope. We can't say that Benedict IX was a good pope, though. On the contrary, historians describe him as cruel, vengeful, and vicious, and he wasted no time showing what he was capable of. His first act as the sole ruler of Rome was to declare war on the powerful Countess Matilda of Tuscany, who also controlled several other Italian states. She had supported his predecessor, and now he was going to teach her a lesson. Benedict sent an army to her lands, pillaged her villages, destroyed her monasteries, and killed thousands of her people. The Countess was horrified and asked for peace, but the Pope wouldn't listen. Instead, he declared her a heretic and gave her lands to his allies. Soon, the whole of northern Italy was at war. At the time, the Pope wasn't just the spiritual leader of the Christian world, but also a powerful feudal lord. He owned vast lands and controlled huge sums of money, and he wasn't afraid to use it. But the war drained the church's treasury. Benedict realized that he needed help and turned to the King of France, Robert the Pious. Although Robert refused to get directly involved, he agreed to pay for an army as long as the Pope crowned his son, the 10th, as the Holy Roman Emperor. Benedict accepted, but once the army arrived in Italy, he changed his mind. He didn't want a puppet emperor, and the people of Rome also hated the French army for pillaging their land. When Robert threatened to take the church's property in France if the Pope didn't honor their agreement, Benedict replied that he wasn't afraid of losing those lands because he planned to conquer France himself. Robert didn't take the threat seriously and soon left Italy. Meanwhile, Benedict continued his war against Countess Matilda, even though his army kept losing battle after battle. After hearing about the death of Robert the Pious, he made an alliance with the King of England, Henry I, and invaded northern Italy. Together, they defeated Matilda and seized her lands. But this victory was short-lived. Anti-papal rebellion soon broke out in southern Italy, and Henry I was needed back home. Before leaving, he signed a treaty with the rebels, granting them independence. As you can imagine, Benedict was furious and immediately excommunicated him. Then, he did something unbelievable. He marched north and crowned the rebellious Duke as the Holy Roman Emperor. If you think that this makes no sense, you are right. In fact, it's one of the reasons why historians believe that the Pope had gone insane. Another reason is that he appointed a German Cardinal as the Bishop of Paris, even though he knew that the French king wouldn't like it. And he was right. Henry II, the son of Robert the Pious, invaded the church lands in France and took them back. Pope Benedict watched helplessly as his enemies gained more and more power. Eventually, he had to escape from Rome and hide in the castle of Anagni. But the citizens of Rome weren't done with him yet. As he lay dying, he sent a letter to the Cardinal of France asking for forgiveness and help. But before he could do anything, he passed away. The citizens of Rome were satisfied with the Pope's demise and soon elected a new one. Despite his short papacy, Benedict left a mark on history. He initiated a policy that allowed priests to marry, which led to an increase in the number of clergy members across Europe. However, his greatest achievement was the construction of the Vatican Palace. Even though he never lived there, he laid the foundation for future popes to have a grand residence. Today, Benedict IX is considered one of the worst popes in history, but maybe that's not entirely fair. Sure, he was cruel, ruthless, and arguably insane, but can you blame him? Throughout his life, he was betrayed, slandered, and attacked without any reason. In fact, the only thing he did wrong was wanting to be the only pope when there were already two of them. Other than that, he was a victim of circumstances. What do you think? Was Benedict IX just misunderstood, or was he truly the most evil pope in history? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and joining our community. And as always, stay tuned for more.